Good day. Very warm welcome to everybody to our webinar, Facing the Corporate Government Nexus, Defending People's and Communities' Rights. This is in the context of 12 years since the enforced disappearance of Sombath Somphone. Greetings, warm greetings. I am Andy Rutherford from the International Organizing Committee of the Asia-Europe People's Forum, and I'm your moderator today. This webinar is co-organized by the Asia-Europe People's Forum and the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights. And we have the privilege of, we hope, 4 exceptional speakers, and if time allows, the opportunity for questions after speakers' presentations. For us all to recall, on December the 15th, 2024, was 12 years since Sombath Somphone was enforced disappeared in Vientiane, Laos, after being the co-organizer of the 9th Asia-Europe People's Forum. Shui Meng, Sombath's wife, will be the first speaker, of course. Shui Meng is originally from Singapore, first worked in the Institute for Southeast Asian Studies there, and then after moving to Laos to join her husband, Sombath Somphone, Shui Meng worked mainly in the development field with several development agencies, focusing on women's development and improvement of livelihoods. From 1989 onwards, she joined UNICEF in Laos, then in China. Shui Meng returned to UNICEF Laos in 2000 as deputy representative. From 2004 to 8, she was assigned as UNICEF representative in Timor-Leste, where she worked until her retirement from UNICEF at the end of 2008. In 2012, her husband, Sombath Somphone, a respected and well-known development leader, was enforced disappeared in Vientiane, right in front of a police post. The entire sequence of Sombath Somphone's abduction was recorded by the Lao Police CCTV. Since her husband's disappearance, Shui Meng has mounted a relentless campaign inside and outside Laos to get Sombath Somphone released and returned safely to her and her family. And over the past 12 years, Shui Meng has traveled the globe tirelessly to meet with the UN agencies, human rights groups, foreign offices, to highlight the case of Sombath Somphone's enforced disappearance and all the victims of enforced disappearance, highlighting their plight and the severity of this heinous human rights violation. Shui Meng, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andy, and a very good day to everybody. First, let me thank the Asia-Europe People's Forum and the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights for organizing this webinar. And as Andy has already introduced, the webinar touches on a very important topic called Facing the Corporate Government Nexus, Defending People's and Communities' Rights. As I ponder over what to say today, my mind, I cannot help it but go back to recall some of the events 12 years ago around the holding of the AEPF 9 forum in Vientiane from 16 to 19th October, in which Sombath was heavily involved throughout all stages of its preparations and organization as the Lao officially approved co-chair of the organizing committee. I believe that, and it's only my own speculation, that Sombath's abduction was triggered by his engagement with this event. I'm going to outline some of the issues. The 9th Asia-Europe People's Forum was on the theme People's Solidarity Against Poverty for Sustainable Development and Challenging Unjust and Unequal Development to build and building states of citizens for citizens. I mean, this is a very, very, very large and relevant topic, and Sombath was asked to participate and help organize. I recall that when Sombath was asked to do this, he had some concern about the role he would have to play in the AEPF. And I myself have some concerns because to get such an important international event approved through the labyrinth of the Lao government would not be easy. And also, the theme, especially addressing issues of unjust and unequal development and holding states and citizens and building states and citizens, these were too sensitive, normally too sensitive to be openly discussed in the Lao context. But nevertheless, Sombath took on the challenge, saying that as a community development worker for over 30 years, had worked with both government partners and the community and with the development community, both NGOs and international development organizations. He felt that he has a responsibility to help organize the event and also to bring the discussion on a more open public forum. He hoped that with this kind of forum and as issues were raised, that the people within Laos, especially also government partners within Laos, will be able to learn and share experiences with other countries in the region as well as with Europe. But when the AEPF 9 opened, I sensed something was wrong, and Sombath sensed it too. And on hindsight, we should have listened to our instincts. When the AEPF 9 opened, there were signs of trouble all over from day one. There were numerous plainclothes police present inside and outside the venue. They were present at every panel discussion, and the papers by the speakers or on issues were left on the table of every panel room. These were taken away. They were taken away, and also when any speaker, even that they're not talking about Laos, are very bit critical about government issue, there were interventions from the plainclothes police sitting in the panel. And especially if Laos were mentioned, it was become clear that nobody can utter a word about Laos, not let alone any real criticisms. It became so clear to the participants from Laos that many of them chose not to speak, even though they were discussants on the panel. And the result we saw 2 months after the closing of the AEPF, Sombath was disappeared. And he was also disappeared 7 days prior to the expulsion of N. Sophie, the director of Helvetas in Laos. And I think it was because she had written a letter criticizing how the Lao government had intimidated and arrested one of the AEPF panelists. I make these remarks to set the context as a background so that we all understand the issue of any kind of open debate, any kind of discussion on development issues or civil society issues within the Lao context. So today's topic, facing the corporate government nexus and defending people's and community rights, this topic, I think, is most relevant and pressing. And even though there are no other Lao panelists, I think it is an issue that interested development practitioners, researchers, people working in the diplomatic corps, partners of the Lao government need to seriously concern themselves and do some thinking about what is the significance of corporate and government nexus in terms of development and the impact on people's rights. 12 years ago at the AEPF 9, Sombath already foresaw this trend of government and corporate nexus. And in his opening speech at the AEPF, he already warned that we are blinded by the power of money, and we let corporations rule the world and even override the power of the state. Ordinary people and society have very little say to all this. Their voices are not heard loud enough by government or by the corporates. That was what he already highlighted in his opening speech. 12 years on, Sombath's comments are even more valid, and probably the situation is even worse now than 12 years ago. Because 12 years ago in 2012, Laos was just embarking on the process of globalization and has just announced a policy of turning land into capital. It was at a very early stage of implementing of this policy. At that time, there were a few investments entering the agro-plantation sector, and there were plans of construction of dams, and even the construction of the Namgan Dam was very much, the Sayaburi Dam. The Sayaburi Dam was very much on the planning stage. Now, 12 years on, the corporate government nexus has even become closer. And now corporates and government often work hand in glove to gain control of state resources that enrich the corporates and the economically powerful at the expense of the poorer people. And all this is done in the name of economic growth and expansion of GDP. In the case of the Lao government planners, together with their international economic advisors, they are very pleased and have in their writings and papers have repeatedly boasted that their policies were right, as evidenced by the very rapid growth of foreign investments in Laos, especially over the past 10 years, the rapid expansion on infrastructure development within Laos, the growth of exports, especially minerals and products like bananas, cassava, and rubber, and so on. These are all through the investments of agro-plantations. And they also pointed out that the annual growth rate of Laos has been more than 8% consistently over the last 10 years. And this growth, yes, indeed, it was a very impressive growth until COVID. Now, since COVID, the economic growth rate of Laos has declined quite a bit. And, but on the whole, the Lao government feel that it is on the right path in terms of its development policy, in terms of the way it has tried to involve companies in its investment plans. However, the flip side at the level of the people and the community is that there is an ever widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. There has been increase in rural impoverishment and rapid devastating impact on environmental degradation, as exemplified by the rapid deforestation, pollution of water resources, and decline of biodiversity, both on the land and in the waters. And all this have very serious consequences on the environmental and social sustainability for future generations. So, I mean, all this actually was foreseen by Sombath. And I feel that what he has said and his position within civil society probably has warned those in power and I don't know who, I don't know which sector of the power structure within Laos have actually took it upon himself to actually take him away and to stop him from his work or being a voice for the people or being a leader in the area of civil society development and community development. But in Laos, there has always been a very limited civil society space to begin with. But Sombath's disappearance has even basically wiped out whatever little space was there in Laos. His disappearance has caused such a fear among the Lao people, and especially Lao young people, people working in communities, people from the communities themselves. It has cast such a pall of fear on the local people that Sombath's name, since his disappearance, has almost never been raised. And they don't talk about him, which is, I think, the very intention of disappearing Sombath in the right place, to remove such a person whose, even his voice is very small and very tiny, on behalf of civil society, on behalf of launching a more sustainable development model. Even that his voice was not very, very, very loud, this was considered a threat enough for him to be taken. As Andy has said, the way he was taken was actually recorded by the police CCTV itself, and he was taken right at a police checkpoint. So, unfortunately, the fear continues up to today. The silence continues up to today. And despite the fact, as Andy has pointed out, I myself have launched a campaign to get answers and urge every human rights loving government or democratic governments to help seek answers for Sombath. The Lao government has always responded with the statement that they are continuing with the investigation. They have found nothing. And this is 12 years on. So before I close, I just want to say that this situation has not gone unnoticed outside, despite the fact they have tried to cover everything inside. And there were attempts, not very major attempts, of like the UN system through the special rapporteur to engage with the government to improve the human rights situation, and also the voices of the civil society here. It has had very little impact. I just give an example. The Special Rapporteur for Cultural Rights, Ms. Alexandra Santaki, recently visited Laos and issued a very frank statement on the state of political, social, and cultural practices in Laos. And in her statement, she commented that Laos has not conducted any human rights assessments, and there is a lack of civil society space for people to express their views on any development issue. It's not my words, it's her words. Her independent assessment through her visit has made her come to this conclusion. And she also stated in her statement that in her official meetings with government officials have repeatedly reassured her that Lao people are satisfied with the government development policies and plans, and they are very happy. So she came out with these meetings even more convinced of the opposite. And she poignantly said, the official's narrative across the board that all people understand and agree to the development projects is just not realistic. And she said, proper consultations where people can express their needs and grievances, let alone the free and prior and informed consent of local communities, is not possible, where civic space simply does not exist and people fear retaliation. She also criticized the government for inadequate compensation for resettlement for land loss and for evictions of people and reallocations of settlements. So these are really some of the very strong negative effects of this Lao model of government and corporate nexus, and it really shows, and it's not just felt by people inside, but it's clearly observed by independent researchers and observers here in Laos. So are we moving on as far as the Lao government is concerned in a fine and dandy way? Is the economic development so well on track that everyone is happy? Unfortunately, that is not so. And we are now just feeling the negative impact of development on the real economy and progress on Lao society. Recently, there are large numbers of articles, research papers, all on the state of the Lao economy. Laos is now laden by heavy debt, most of which were incurred as a result of their finance for the numerous infrastructure projects like the Lao-China Railway, investment in mining development, and the construction of large numbers of dams. The Lao debt burden now is reportedly standing at 108% of the country's gross development product, or 13.8 billion kip, with much of it owed to China. So the result is Laos now suffers from hyperinflation the last 2-3 years and is on the rise. And inflation is now running at 23% in 2022 and 31% currently. Food prices especially have soared more than 40%. And the Lao kip has depreciated to nearly half of its value compared to 3 years ago. Who are those most badly hit by the situation? Of course, the poor are paying the price. The urban poor and the rural poor families have reportedly to skip meals, and many poor families have withdrawn their children from school. The schools in rural areas are almost nearly empty. The children are not attending. The teachers are not coming to classes. And such challenges have also not gone unnoticed even within Laos. And these have become topics of discussion at the National Assembly. And the parliamentarians have been urged by senior leaders to find ways to resolve all this problem. But these problems are of the government's own making. So it's like, how are you going to resolve it? Because you have actually dug the deep hole yourself. Some people have now even openly blamed the economic woes to rampant corruption, which has been going on unchecked for years. And that such unchecked corruption is a consequence of the very poor laws, poor governance system, and bad management at all levels. Now, Laos, unfortunately, has become crime-infested, especially in the areas of drug abuse, drug trafficking, human trafficking, endangered species trafficking, gambling and cybercrime and all that. And all that taking place mostly in the border areas, bordering China in the north and Cambodia in the south. And one of the most, I've written for years already, the most notorious venue where such crimes are rampant is conducted in a concession in Poten, which is known as the King's Roman complex. And the complex, and this concession was given to the founder of the King's Roman Development, a Chinese national by the name of Zhao Wei, who is actually a wanted criminal on the Interpol list. But he walks freely in Laos. And he continues to run bars, casinos, hotels, nightclubs, and also wildlife restaurants where they offer endangered species as part of the menu. And the irony is Zhao Wei, this Chinese investor of King's Roman, has actually been given 2 awards, not one, 2 awards for his contribution to Laos development. It's quite an irony. I don't know whether the Lao government sees this as an irony, but indeed, the people outside do see it. So this is the state of, or the one of the consequences of the government corporate nexus in Laos and how it has impacted on people's life. So sometimes I wonder if somehow, if Sombath has not been disappeared and was allowed to work, continuing his work in rural community development, continue his education of young people, empowering them, and continuing his work of encouraging more open dialogue and debate in the civil society space as well as within government, would have changed the status of Laos development model a little bit. But of course, I will never know. I will close now and hope that we will continue discussion with the other panelists. Thank you.
Shui Meng, thank you so much indeed for that brilliant presentation. Quite simply, for all of us, until the truth is found and justice is delivered to your family, Sombath's family, we will not stop demanding answers from the Lao government to the same question we've been asking for the past 12 years. Where is Sombath? Hundreds of families across the region empathize with you, Shui Meng, and I know that you do with them. In the latest annual report, the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances said it has counted more than 1,130 cases across Southeastern Asia since 1980, the majority of which remain unsolved. Defines the practice as an arrest, detention, or abduction by state agents or their proxies, and the state's refusal to either acknowledge the event or reveal the victim's fate. Many cases date back decades. The lack of resolution has lasting consequences, the Sunai Pashuk, senior researcher for Human Rights Watch Thailand, said. It has created, he said, quote, it's created a sense of impunity that wrongdoers can continue their wrongdoings and get away from their crimes. And in parallel to that, the climate of fear has been reinforced, he said. Quite simply, corporate globalization seems to be founded on lacks of accountability and the shortcutting of so much accountability through nation states. Corporate capture of power and democratic processes is what is summarized often. We'd like to build on your contribution, Shui Meng, and the discussion around our title and invite our second speaker, Charles Santiago. Charles was 3 times elected member for the Malaysian Parliament for the Klang constituency in Selangor between 2008 and 2022, was the chair of the Select Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional Affairs of Malaysia from 2019 to 22. Prior to his election, he was an economist and worked for non-governmental organizations, including the chair of the National Water Services Commission. He is very active. He is involved very actively in the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights as co-chair and a regular and respected commentator on regional issues. Charles, you are very warmly welcomed. Please.
Thanks, Andy. Let me just begin by extending my greetings of peace and solidarity to all those in the webinar, but especially to Meng. As Meng was talking earlier, it's 12 years. Excuse me. 12 years ago, we were there in Vientiane. We did a lot of things together. We discussed, we ate, we drank together. We visited a lot of places in Vientiane. And looking back after 12 years, it's really painful. sorry, guys. Sorry. But I also would like to acknowledge the contribution of Sombath, which was expressed through Shui. The analysis that he had provided, the long-term perspective challenges that he outlined, that's something that we'll be confronting not only in Southeast Asia, but also the rest of Asia. While it's very painful at a at a personal level, but also as a society and as a community level, we need to learn from those experiences and move on, using the examples in the analysis. One of the things that I think I visited after Sombath's disappearance 2 times as part of a fact-finding mission, 2 different fact-finding missions to Vientiane subsequent to the disappearance. And we met diplomats, we met NGOs, we met civil society groups, we met ministers, right up to the vice president, I think. And we also met Parliament, Speaker of Parliament in all of these occasions. And what I quickly realized was that there was a government that you could see, and there was a government that you could not see. And clearly, there was a deep state. I think it came out quite clearly, at least in the mid process, in the investigation process, that there's some things that are happening here that nobody seems to be able to account. And that was coming from the deep state. We met, I think, 1 or 2 ministers who were friends of Sombath, who went to the University of Hawaii, where Sombath, I think, studied. They were village friends. They knew each other. And they all in deep shock how this could have happened. Of course, they could not say there was a deep state, but it's quite clear from the analysis that we have, that we discussed, and face-to-face discussions, we could see, especially coming from the diplomats, there was a deep state. Deep state found Sombath, especially the traction and the ideas that he was putting forward, as a threat. Clearly, that was the reason why they took him out. There was a forced disappearance. So he was seen, his ideas, his involvement with the local, especially involving land, local groups involving land, and the projections that he was making about the challenges of the future was seen as a threat, by Sombath 12 years ago. And this is what he was talking about. And that was very carefully in detail explained to us by Meng. Now, today, fast forward 12 years, or maybe even 10 to 12, the last 6, 7 years, we see a backsliding of human rights and democracy in the region. All along the lines of what Meng was saying, it was quite clear. We have now a major backsliding of democracy in the region. And one element, or one of the causes, or one of the contributors of that backsliding of democracy is this corporate government nexus. Let me just talk about the backsliding first, and then jump into the notion of a corporate government nexus. Now, we have a situation in Thailand where a party that won the elections has been banned. And not only have they been banned, they have now, all of them are facing charges. And the chances are they all might go to jail, or they all will lose their position or their status as members of parliament. So this is the organization. It was started off as a Future Forward, and it was banned at that time. They won the elections, they were banned. And then they started, Future Forward became Move Forward, and Move Forward was also banned. And they won the elections, by the way. Their nominee was the nominee of the prime minister. But the rules were used against them in a way that was very creative. And today they have to close down, or they were banned. Move Forward was also banned. And now they have now moved to a new party called the People's Party, the People's Party. Now, clearly, the winner has become the loser. Democracy has taken major backsliding. And today, democracy really means nothing, though, because it can be bought over, it can be threatened, it can be turned around, it can be played around, it can be captured by the elite, and in this particular case, by the royalty of the country. So really, democracy, to use the word backsliding, it also makes no sense anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. It can be bought and sold. That's how it is happening. If we go to Philippines, for example, the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights did a kind of analysis after the elections that took place last year in the Philippines. And one of the things that we were looking at was this notion of disinformation. And it is shocker, because the Marcos family is seen now today, including the father, as a father of development of the Philippines. And on top of that, the son, who's now the president, everybody thinks he actually is a Harvard graduate. He might have passed by Harvard, but that's all that he would have done. He never went for classes at Harvard. He doesn't have a degree from Harvard. But you ask everybody, oh, yeah, he's from Harvard University. Look at the level of disinformation that is going on. And in the case of Indonesia, it is a former general involved in provoking people, going after the Chinese, setting up the local people against the Chinese. Today has come back as the president of the country. So clearly, you can see all of the developments here indicate that we are not going forward, but really we are not even stagnant, but we are going backwards. And in the entire process, you can see the gap in the rich and the poor has got worse. More and more people are going hungry, and some new phenomena that is actually becoming a major problem in the region is called stunted growth. And this is something that we have never seen in the region, especially in the case of Malaysia. Malaysia today faces stunted growth. So while the rich continue to hold on to democracy, capture democracy for their interests, it is the poor, as what pointed out by Shui, that are victims of this process and unable to fight back. Really unable to fight back for a variety of reasons. And I'll go to that in looking at what the notion of today's discussion, or the focus of today's discussion on corporate and government nexus as one of the factors why there's a backsliding of democracy in the region. Now, across ASEAN and elsewhere, defenders of people's rights, activists, indigenous communities, environmental protectors are being targeted, harassed, and silenced. At the heart of these attacks lies the corporate government nexus, a dangerous collusion that sacrifices people's rights for profit and power. Here clearly, corporations prioritize profit and business over people and people's interests. Governments either support these corporations, remain silent, or actively suppress those who challenge them. The nexus takes many forms: land grabs, where communities are displaced for development, so-called development, so-called climate solutions, and the weaponization of laws to intimidate and silence critiques through what is called SLAP lawsuits. SLAP lawsuits are what you call strategic lawsuits against public participation. So you can see this becoming a very common, SLAP is becoming very common all over the region now. And the targets are always indigenous communities, worker leaders, trade union leaders, land leaders, peasant leaders, and so on and so forth. So the outcome is always the same. Communities lose their homes, communities lose their livelihoods, and voices where corporations become more prosperous and powerful. Now, one good example of all of that I said earlier is in the Philippines. I just got back from the Philippines, and I was stunned beyond belief. We are doing an inquiry on the Philippines, and it's shocking what is going on. I mean, outright grab of people's rights, outright grab of people's homes, outright grab of people's land. So over the last years, in the case of the Philippines, we have seen, I think one can say that Philippines has been the deadliest country in Asia for those defending their land and environment. Between 2012 and 2023, 298 environmental defenders were killed. These are not accidents. They're not happening because for whatever reason, but the same reason why Sombath was taken away, same situation here. They are part of a systemic attack. These are defenders. Defenders are punished for opposing destructive industries like mining, logging, and land clearing, which benefit corporations and their government backers. In the case of Sombath, it was the ideas, it was the fear of government that Sombath might fuel, might stimulate, might push, might mobilize for major changes in Laos itself. It is that similar idea that you find all in these countries, and these corporations and government go after leaders, especially from the indigenous communities and poor communities, and wipe them out and kill them. As you can say, 298 environmental defenders were killed in between 2012 and 2023. Now, activists and indigenous leaders in the Philippines are often subjected to what you call red tagging. Now, what is red tagging? Where the government labels so-called identified groups or individuals as communist insurgents. Communist insurgents or threats to national security simply just for speaking out, making a comment, or just getting quoted in the newspapers in a very critical fashion. These labels become a death sentence where people are arrested without reason, they are abducted, and they disappear or they're killed extrajudicially. So you can see similar patterns 12 years ago in Laos, and you can see the last for so many years in the rest of Southeast Asia, and specifically here in the Philippines. So this creates fear. Poor communities are paralyzed by fear, enabling corporations to proceed with their projects without oversight or accountability, while justice is overlooked and profits continue to rise. The Philippines shows us what happens when corporate power and state repression work together. This is something that you can see across the board, though, where corporate power and the state repression or state slap laws, if you want, that comes together to capture or to put down or to smash resistance groups in different parts of the country or different parts of the region, or in this case, the Philippines. Now, the other is, of course, the idea mentioned of SLAPP, SLAPP, which is strategic lawsuits against public participation. Now, while communities on one side are stripped of their cultural ties to the land, corporations continue polluting elsewhere using carbon offsets as a license to pollute. Carbon markets are not climate solutions. Instead, they enable land grabs, displacement, and greenwashing, pushing the burden of carbon savings onto communities in the global south. Now, we look at this weaponizing the law. While SLAPP suits silence, SLAPP laws silence defenders, carbon markets under false climate solutions actively displace communities. These two tactics are interconnected tools of the corporate government nexus. According to Business and Human Rights Resource Center, SLAPP suits have become a global tactic or a global strategy to stifle dissent, particularly in Asia. They are increasingly used to silence activists, journalists, and whistleblowers. These lawsuits are not about justice, they are about intimidation. So SLAPP suits or SLAPP cases are filed by corporations or powerful actors to punish and silence critics who expose harm or demand accountability. They aim to exhaust resources, forcing defenders to spend time, money, and energy, and sometimes their own lives, and in order to speak out against such violations of their rights or land grabs or whatever the case may be. Now, there's a very famous case involving a Malaysian company. It's called Samling Group, which actually filed 5 million defamation lawsuit against the NGO Safe River. And there are many other examples of this. For example, in Thailand, in 2019, the Human Rights Law Association revealed that out of the 212 slap cases between 1997 and May 2019, 196 were criminal suits, only 9 were civil cases, and 7 cases were classified as both. So the focus of criminal litigation is a deliberate strategy. Companies and influential individuals tend to favor the risk of criminal penalties, including imprisonment, rather than pursuing financial damages. So basically, this is a strategy that is being used by companies and governments working together in order to silence dissent. And in the case of Philippines, as I mentioned earlier, you have lots of people are being killed. People are being killed. And it's Philippines is the deadliest country in the region. And therefore, it goes back to the fear that the Laotian government had on ideas that were coming out of Sombath. It was, again, a fear that new ideas might be able to create a new paradigm in the way young people think. It will begin to mobilize and energize activists and people who are concerned about their land, whose land is being grabbed, to think and to have a different development strategy, one that is more equitable, one that is more justice-based, one that is more people-centered. So clearly, people
maybe
like
2 minutes, Charles.
So people like Sombath led the way. They told us, "Hey, this is the problem. Get ready, be prepared," and they gave their lives for it. This is the lesson that we take from Sombath. And this is also the solidarity we take from Sombath, that we spread the idea and we work with all our partners and friends in order to ensure that there will be no more Sombaths and there'll be no killing, that we can have a better environment, a just environment, where we enable societies and better distribution of wealth and power among our citizens and our countries going forward. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Charles, deep thanks as well. Thank you. And for all the consistent work across the ASEAN member countries, which is relentlessly challenging, if not depressing at times. But really, really deep respect. Thank you. Just before we invite Anna Lorena, just a couple of pieces of context for you, Anna Lorena. First of all, what symbolized the challenges that could have been perceived by the Lao government, made by not just Sombath, but many people involved from Laos in the Asia-Europe People's Forum, was the development of what was called a Lao People's Vision. And this was a consultative process which took place across Laos ahead of the AEPF, including representative state-led or related organizations, local government officials, people from civil society, etc., to develop things which are remarkably around the Sustainable Development Goals and participatory development, all the things at the heart of the UN process at present, the development process. Nothing radical, just exactly taking forward and seeing how you could do it in practice at the local level in Laos in the coming years. That was developed transparently, working with government, as was the forum itself, as Shui Meng said. And when it was available in the forum for Lao delegates in Laos, it was confiscated by the government. It was not allowed to be seen. And it is a profound symbolism of the whole process. And the second point is that from 1996, when the first Asia-Europe People's Forum began in Thailand, in Bangkok, in the context of the Asia-Europe meeting, that's the meeting of the Asia and European heads of state and government, which used to take place every 2 years before Russia invaded Ukraine and disrupted the process, let's say, that we have been discussing this relationship that Charles and Shui Meng have talked about, the consequences, the reality and consequences of corporate-led globalization and the corporate capture of so-called democratic and political processes. you know, it's the intensification of it over this period, which is the deep concern. And the question that we have to pose to each other is, how do we respond? You know, how do we respond? This is, the analysis is clear, the effects are horribly clear, both at the personal and the societal levels in so many countries, including across Latin America as well, as you may share with us. But how do we respond? What is to be done? Anyway, sorry to be not pessimistic, but the realistic link. So now we welcome our third speaker. We warmly welcome Ana Lorena Delgadillo Pérez, who amongst many activities since 2023 is a member of the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances. Ana Lorena Delgadillo is a Mexican human rights lawyer with over 20 years of expertise in women's and migrants' rights, disappearances, femicides, criminal justice system, independence of judiciary or not, militarization, and citizen security. Through her work with public administration and civil society, Ana Lorena Delgadillo has contributed to law and policy, as well as greater public recognition of the plight of victims of grave human rights violations in Mexico and Central America related to impunity and the lack of rule of law. Ana Lorena, our special solidarity thanks go to you, as you are joining us you began at 3 a.m. from Mexico City. You are very warmly welcomed. Please.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you to all the organizers for inviting me to be here. First of all, I have to say that I am very grateful for this invitation to share some reflections around the 12 years of for disappearance of Sombath, and I want to express my most profound appreciation to the struggle and to the long road travel by Shui, who I met days ago. I have the opportunity to meet her and to be witness of all her bravery, of all her courage, and all the fight that she is conducting to know about the fate and whereabouts of Sombath, but also about some other disappearances that are occurring in Laos. So all our respect for her in the name of the working group. What I have been witness in these cases is the role of women that many times we don't see clearly this role. I come from a country where we have more than 110,000 people that have been disappeared. And I have been working for many years also with mothers, with sisters from Central America or South America that are also searching their migrants that have been disappeared in their way to the United States. And I have to say that are women the ones that are building this transnational this transnational way for justice and for truth. And Shui is no deception. She is representing this struggle for many women that are moving not only one country but the world, demanding truth and effective investigation, and demanding that they search for all the disappearances in the world. So from the working group, we like to underline the responsibility of Laos around the disappearance of Sombath, and saying that we want to remind, to keep in mind some of the basic obligations that Laos must be fulfilled. First of all, it's very important that the government can show what are the searching activities that they are doing. And I have to say searching and separate searching from investigations for something that we learn here in the Americas. In our countries, like in Mexico, in Colombia, in Peru, the mothers, mainly the mothers, but also the wives of the sister, were seen when they were going to the prosecutor office to see how the investigation was going. they found it out that if they were doing something, because we have to remember that in our countries we have a very high impunity, that, for example, in Mexico we have more than 95% of impunity in general, and also in cases of forced disappearances. But if they are doing something, they use the time to see who are the responsibles, for who are the perpetrators for the disappearances. And the family said, stop. We want to know who did it, of course, because that's a part of our right to know, the right of truth. But first, we want you to focus on searching him, because you are using the very few efforts that you are doing for searching the perpetrators and not for searching my loved one, my family. So the families oblige the government to separate areas for searching and for investigation. So, for example, in Colombia, in Peru, and in Mexico, we have an special institutionality only for doing the searching, and it's a humanitarian searching. What does it mean? That the only thing that these authorities must do is search, have a plan for searching, doing specific activities for searching, and collaborate with the authorities that are doing the investigation. But not use that time for looking for the perpetrators, only for the searching, humanitarian searching. If you ask me if this has some results, in some countries it has some results, because what we found also is that in many countries, and I have seen this not only in the Americas, but I have heard this in Asia or in Africa. In many of our countries where we have authoritarian regimes, families are very afraid to go and present a case before the general attorney office or before the police, because they know that many times they might be involved on those enforced disappearance. So families did not want to go and present a case before the prosecutor system. So they demand to have a different system that are not built by prosecutors, that are built by investigators, that are built by people that is trained to do the search. So in that way, they don't put themselves like in risk for having a criminal investigation. So that's how this institutionality was built here in Mexico, in Colombia, and in some other countries, only to do the search. Still, if you want, in some other space, I can talk more about this, because this could be a good learning, a good sharing experience between regions. There are so many failures. Still, we have a long way to go, but at least now we have one institution that the families can go and demand only the searching. So it doesn't matter that Laos doesn't have this special institutionality. Laos still have the obligation to do the searching. Laos has the responsibility to have a specific plan for the searching, and specific actions for the searching. And this plan and this action should be consulted with the families, consulted all the time with the families. The second obligation that I want to underline is the investigation. Laos, as many of the countries where enforced disappearance happens, must conduct an impartial, effective, and true investigation. What does it mean? It means first that it is not enough to say, we are investigating. Because many times we have seen in many of the regions that when the families go to the authorities, they always say, but we are doing our work. We are investigating. For example, here in Mexico, when they go and they see the files for the investigations, they have many papers of investigation, but no truth investigation. Because having many papers on the file, it doesn't mean that they are doing something really effective for the investigation. So they also must build a plan, and a specific plan for the investigation, having different scenarios to think who may be the perpetrators, to include, for example, in cases like this, to include how the business sector could be or not involved, what interest the person was touching or was bothering. So all of this must be part of the investigation plan. And the families must also be involved on that. In many of the countries, what happened when the families go and ask to the authorities about the investigations, the authorities say, oh, but you don't have any news to tell me? Like if the obligation of the investigations is on the families, and it is not on the families. It is not on the families. The obligation for the investigation is on the authorities. So that's why we must demand laws to have a specific plan for investigation and specific actions for investigation. Consult this with Shui Meng and with the family. And then when she goes to us about what they are doing, review all the points of the plan of investigation and searching that they must do it and build it together with the family. So the next time they don't say only we are investigating. So you follow a plan and you do a follow-up according to the plan. The third thing that I would like to underline is the obligation of the family, of the government to support the families. Support the families is, in first place, not to persecute them, not to criminalize them, not to threaten them. Because that is what happened in many of the cases and in many regions, in many countries. Sometimes the authorities blame the victim for its own disappearance. Imagine that. And sometimes they blame the families also for the disappearance. That is criminalization. But in many other cases, they threaten the families and they want the time pass by. So the families get tired and they stop searching for the loved ones. But what I have heard, what I have learned, and what inspired me deeply from the families is that every day is a new day for a searching. They will never stop. They will never stop doing the searching. So if the countries once only the time pass by, so the families get tired, they must be disappointed because the families will never do that. So supporting the families is helping them to do the search. And also in some countries, what they do is given economical and psychological support to do the searching, because what they are facing is a torture. It's a torture to live every single day without knowing where is your family. And it's a torture also not to know what the authorities are doing for the searching, not having any information about the searching and about the investigation. So defending people and community rights was what Sombath was doing. And I want to close my presentation saying what we are doing now on the working group for disappearance. As you may know, we have the case, and we keep demanding to the government for an answer for its obligation. But now this year, we are conducting a report about enforced disappearance in the context of the defense of land, natural resources, and environment. And why are we doing this? Because like in Sombath case, we found it out that every time we have more cases where the ones that are in risk are the ones that are defending land, natural resources, and environment, the ones that are defending the community's right. Those in some countries are called terrorists. Those in some countries are having organized crime persecution and investigations. So the state is using all the hardest institutionality against the ones who are defending land and against the ones who are defending our rights. Because who is defending environment is defending my rights. Who is defending the land is defending my rights. So that's why in the working group, we are conducting this study. And what do we want to know? First, we want to know the context where this occurred. Meng was talking about agro-industry, about mining, and about projects, different projects of development for the countries. Development that also only are beneficial for some, but not for the communities, and that are never consulted with the communities. So we want to know where this is happening. We want to know also how enforced disappearances are used as a tool to stop those who are defending land, who are defending nature, who are defending environment, and who are defending those rights of the community. How enforced disappearances are being used, and what is the message that they want to send with this? Because is attacking the leader is attacking the community, but also is attacking the country, is attacking a region. It's a way to send a message saying whoever might want to do this might have the same consequences of being a people who is going to be disappear. And then we want to know who are the victims.
Yes.
And here is something very interesting for us from the working group, because we have been working many cases of enforced disappearances where the victim is the person who disappeared and the family. Here is very different. And we are learning a lot, because here we have the communities and we have regions. I was just in Colombia talking to indigenous people from the Amazonas, and they were saying that they have groups that are in many countries. So we don't even can say that we have victims in one country or in one community. We need to extend and to have a more comprehensive understanding of who are the victims when we are talking of people who defend land, natural resources, and environment. This is something that we are going to learn with the working group. Who are the perpetrators? And we are not talking only about the state. We are talking about the enterprise and about the business sector.
Exactly.
And we want to see if we can go a little bit more ahead on this, on the obligations. We know that in the business sector, they have disagreements.
Just one more minute, if possible. Yeah.
Yes, to close. They have disagreements, and they say they have the due diligence in the rights of the people in the territories where they are working. I have to say that due diligence is not enough. Is not enough when they own the territories that the state has given to them. So we want to learn in this study if we can say share responsibility for searching, share responsibility for investigation or for reparation. So we want to learn also what are the challenges that the families are facing for investigation, for prevention. And we are waiting. I hope that we can have some submissions from the people who is listening to us in this space. And I want to close saying that again, I want to reiterate my admiration to Meng for all that what she has been doing, not only for the case that you are facing, or for your personal situation, for some bad disappearance, but for raising your voice for all the people in Laos and in the world. And the working group will continue raising also its voice, demanding Laos government an answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ana Lorena. It's with deep respect and gratitude for your incisive and brilliant and comprehensive contribution, and your work on the UN Committee on Enforced Disappearances. It is a tragic symbol of today's, I used to say phase, now I say era of corporate-led globalization, that the UN Committee, the UN Working Group on Enforced Disappearances is tragically so necessary and so active. It is a horrible symbol of today's world, but your work within that is deeply respected. Thank you. As we all know, it is a global issue, and one of the countries who have many people are very active in the Asia-Europe People's Forum, are from Pakistan. And many of the participants from Pakistan have themselves at times been enforced disappeared. I know, Saeed Baloch is here today, who was enforced disappeared at one stage. And we're very privileged to have as our fourth speaker, Haider Alibat, who is a prominent lawyer and human rights advocate from Pakistan. Haider Alibat is an advocate in the High Court of Pakistan, a founder of the respected Progressive Democratic Lawyers Forum, as well as vice president of the Hukuk El Khalq Party, and he is also CEO of the Policy and Advocacy Solutions. Well, that's a lot. And I know you're exceedingly busy, unfortunately, in Pakistan. So it's a deep privilege for us that you've been able to join us today, Haider. So you're very warmly welcomed, and please, your contribution. We can't hear you yet.
Hear me?
Now it's good.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think it's an honor for me that you give me the opportunity to speak among these distinguished panelists. And I am actually really mesmerized, and I have learned a lot by the learned panelists in this webinar. So basically, as my practice is around, my criminal practice, and it surrounds the issue of human rights and enforced disappearances. But before going through my personal experience, I would like to, give you an overview of the political, social, and economic crisis that Pakistan has been facing, and how that crisis is allowing the state, and state is to silence the voices of dissent, and has basically imposed the state of emergency, and disappearing the people and violating the human rights. So that what is the state of Pakistan? What is the political crisis here? So basically, as we all know, that the world is rapidly changing, and we see what happened in Palestine. We saw what happened in Syria, and we saw basically what happened in Afghanistan. There is, around the world, there is a rise of ultra right wing with the help of America and Israel. And we can clearly see that the liberal order, which basically propagates about the human rights and other basically fundamental rights, this whole liberal order has been collapsing. And in this situation, we are basically entering into the new Cold War, whatever you may say it, an inter-imperialist war between China and America. And what's happening around the globe is that states are learning not to respect the fundamental rights and human rights. And especially if we see in the context of Pakistan, Pakistan is a new colonial state. I would not say it is a post-colonial state, but a new colonial state who has inherited military and civil bureaucracy institutions who are very much overdeveloped. And these repressive state structures are not only basically constitute the executive, but they are also involved in a large corporate practices. For example, in Pakistan, it's not the state that has the military, it's the military that has the state. And Pakistan military is basically an empire, a business empire, along with the armed forces. It's a basically business empire. All the big businesses are occupied by the military. In every business there is a monopoly of military. So keeping in view this background, what's happening in Pakistan now is they are basically destroying our climate. How they are destroying our climate? That the military has introduced that they would now enter into the business of corporate farming. And what is corporate farming? That they would basically snatch the lands from the little farmers and hand it to the military journals, and they would basically now cultivate that land. And what is happening that in the area of Cholistan, they have given 5,000 acres of land to a single individual, and to cultivate that land, they are basically making 6 canals out of the Indus River. And Indus River is already in the crisis, and there is very much less water in the Indus River. And we have been seeing it since decades that the degradation of the water levels and the river of Sindh is already in a state of crisis. On that river, the military is now trying to make 6 canals that would basically entertain the cultivation of corporate farming, the land now occupied by the military journals and private and wealthy private individuals. At one stage, this is happening. At the second stage, they are snatching the lands from the peasants, from the landless peasants, the peasants who have basically, you may say, 5 to 7 acres of land. And these all the policies of military would bring the catastrophic impacts on the climate change of Pakistan. And Lahore and other cities of Pakistan has been already nominated as the worst when it comes to the climate change. So in this situation we are operating, and all those people who basically question the military's rule, who question the orders of the military, who question against our struggles against the corporate farming, are all under threat. And what they do and what they have been doing, they basically penalize people by enforcefully disappearing them, by putting up charges against them. So let me tell you a little brief history how the matter of enforced disappearances has started in Pakistan. So this brief but horrifying episode is a continuation of a longer history of enforced disappearances in Pakistan. In 1960, the regime of dictator General Ayub abducted a leftist intellectual and political worker Hassan Nisar, whose body was never recovered. Since then, the issue of missing persons has persisted in the country, with the war on terror acting as a catalyst in escalating the number of cases. So, as one of the attendees in the has commented in the inbox, that Tahira Abdullah Saiba, that the issue of enforced disappearances has aggravated after the war on terror, when America intervened Afghanistan, and for on the orders of the America, General Pervez Musharraf handed over thousands of ordinary citizens of Pakistan from the peripheries to the America as those involved in the terrorist activities under the pretext of. And basically we can say that from that very movement, from that very time, the enforced disappearances has been rapidly seen in the country, and not a single perpetrator of enforced disappearances has been punished, not a single one. On the orders of the Supreme Court, a commission on enforced disappearances was constituted, and they have around more than 7,000 applications for now. And these are the people, as Anna was saying, a very few people, and other participants were saying, a very few people came out and go to the courts and go to the attorney generals and police. There is a larger number of families of missing persons who are not coming out because of the fear of the state, and state basically punish their families and crack down against them. So what happened is, now I recently have been fighting a case of a former MNA member, National Assembly, Ali Wazir, who is a communist, who is a socialist, and has been a member of the parliament, who went missing. And when I petitioned in the Lahore High Court, and the court ordered to basically produce him, He has been shifted to another jail. He has been shifted to another jail under different charges. And this is happening with the member of National Assembly. Then there are senators who are abducted. Then there are high-profile journalists who have been abducted. The recent abduction of Matiullah Jan has come to the surface from Islamabad. Then there are thousands of PTA workers who are disappeared. There are thousands of Baloch who have been disappeared in this country. Thousands of Pashtuns, we have no idea where they are. And then there are thousands of Sindhis, we have no idea where they are. But the families of the missing persons are fighting against them. One of the most radical and popular movement who started in 2018, Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, was basically against the enforced disappearances from the Pashtun belt, and they are demanding to release their loved ones. Similarly, recently, an other upsurge we've seen in the Baloch belt in Balochistan is the movement of led by the Baloch Executive Committee, where thousands of missing persons and their families came out and they went to the capital, and how the state treated them, we have all seen on the media. They were threatened, they were arrested, they were punished for simply raising their voice to release their loved ones. So this is the state we are living in, and what they are doing to basically legally protect it. We have a remedy in Pakistan Constitution under Article 199. If someone goes missing, we can file a habeas corpus in the High Court. And 199 subsection 3 already bar us not to file a petition against a member of the armed forces. However, the fact is that, almost all the disappearances are allegedly being done by the military and armed forces. Now, what are they doing? So what we do here, we make a party to the police. So it's law enforcement agencies. Armed force are different, and then law enforcement agencies, or we make the government the party and file a habeas corpus. Now, what are they doing is that according to the 26th Amendment, they are trying that no one can file a writ petition in the High Court, even against the law enforcement agencies. What would happen in that case? In that case, there would be no remedy left for the people of Pakistan, any legal remedy left for people of Pakistan to find their loved ones, to seek justice from the courts. If you are not allowing people to seek justice from the court, if you are not allowing them to protest, if the state is not allowing them to even raise their voice, what could they do? They would definitely, take the path that we do not want the young people to adopt that. And what is happening in the Baloch belt? All the young Baloch have been, went to the war against the military, and they have basically formed the militant groups, and they are now fighting it. So what I think it's a global phenomena. What's happening in Pakistan is not an exception. It's happening globally, and we need to now question the politics that's basically dominating the global order. We have to question the ultra right wing. We have to question the state of nature that is changing under capitalism day by day. The state has been becoming ruthless and oppressive day by day. So we, the progressive people, we the people from the left, we the people who believe in human rights, we the people who believe in the fundamental rights, we think that now is the time to raise voice against enforced disappearances. And I also want to say that we are in complete solidarity as an individual and as the vice president of my party on a comrade Sombath, and we demand its urgent release. So I think we need to come together, we need to form alliances, and we need to raise our voice globally that we cannot live in this state of exception. We cannot be punished by the invisible, penal structures. We would not allow you to treat us mere bodies that can only be tortured and disposed of. We are human beings. We have rights we have fundamental rights, and all these states and the armed forces around the world that are involved in must be held accountable. And the last, I would like you to say, there is a beautiful, exceptional way forward is put by the Anna and other comrades. But I would like to say that until unless the perpetrators who are involved in this crime are not punished, this crime against humanity would go on. And I would like to quote the example of Argentina. What happened there, they basically tried the military generals who are involved in and for disappearances. I'm not go into the details that how many are involved and how many they persecuted, but they show us the way. Until unless we do not punish and held accountable those who are involved in this crime would go on. And thank you so much again for inviting me, and I have learned from this session a lot. Thank you so much. Struggle goes on.
Oh, thank you so much, Haider. That is really inspirational. Your work is inspirational. Your resilience is inspirational. And the context of Pakistan, as most of us know, is profoundly challenging, as it is in so many countries today. But it takes and requires individuals like you, organizations like you have established, to be that voice, to be in the legal processes at great personal cost, to be able to say the things you do to people in power, and to push and demand accountability, but above all, as you have just said so beautifully, respect for the humanity and the human beings in this process. Yeah. And in a sense, you've all answered in different ways my question: what can be done? Well, what can be done is for Shui Meng to do what she's been doing, as in the situation of demanding to know where is Sombath, for Charles to continue at the regional level and through parliamentarians specifically to ask these questions in a structured and consistent way, structured and consistent being key. For Alan Lorena to, on the basis of your decades of experience, to, in addition, contribute to the UN working group, and to let all these experiences become presented, shared, exchanged, and reflected on at the international, the United Nations level. And for you, Haider, at the national level and local level and the personal level in Pakistan, to be an example of how we use the contradictory, weak, and frail legal systems to demand that accountability. And I would like to say also for the Asia-Europe People's Forum, to continue as we have done, to try and ensure collaboration between people who are fighting for human rights, for participatory democracy, and above all, for a just, equal, and inclusive approaches to whatever we want to call it, development, in general, but basically our lives. I know Charles Santiago has had to leave. He's traveling now immediately, but I believe Charles has had to leave already. We have maybe 10 minutes or so for some questions. I know time is, I've judged that it's important for our esteemed and respected speakers to be able to share their experiences as a priority, but I can see that Farouk wants to say something. So Farouk Tariq from Pakistan, please.
Thank you. And thank you all the speakers for raising the Sombath. We have not forgotten him. I met him at Laos when we held our AEPF, and I was so happy to attend that AEPF gathering, because there was a lot of discussion, not only formally but informally as well. And the government of Laos was sort of promoting us, giving all sort of support. Some ministers came to our meetings. So we were thinking that this is opening up of a country. We spoke about socialism, we spoke against Stalinism, we spoke about democracy, democratic socialism. But finally, when we left and then we heard the news of Sombath, it was absolute shocking news that the person who organized the whole brilliant event is not there anymore, and he has been missing since then. And we know that gathering at Ghent in 2018, we started from Sombath, and AEPF will ensure that we don't and never forget Sombath and all those missing, and we will continue our struggle to find those who are not with their loved ones. So I just want to say this few words in solidarity with those whose loved one are missing, who are not there, and people, comrades like Haider and others are consistently working for making effort. And I thank you, Anna, your great deliberation, learned about your activities. Impressed the way you have been taking this issue.
Many thanks, Farouk, for that statement, which I know reflects everyone's feelings. Does anyone from the participants, does anyone wish to share any thoughts? We maybe have only time for one or two comments or reflections. And if not, I will ask if any of the participants would like to share anything in reflection. No, I can't see. I know there is lots of people who would like to, but no one is putting their hands up or showing me anything in the chat. Just have to check. Yeah, I can't see any hands up. I think the respect is clearly total. Shui, Meng, Anna, Haider, is there anything you'd like to say in reflection in the last few minutes? Or has everything been said? Shui, Meng, please.
Again, I'd want to thank the panelists. I think all your presentations actually are much more comprehensive, and you've been working many years in this area. And many of the challenges seems to be, much greater than even what I face. So I thank you for your solidarity, and thank you for your support. And unfortunately, Charles is not here. I just want to say that what Charles said about the deep state,
Yes.
it is so true here.
Yes.
Because on one hand, there are very good people within government, and and they all knew Sombath, but they too were shocked. Of course, once it happens, there is a kind of consolidating behind the line of keeping silence, because they too could become victims of the deep state.
Yes. Yes.
So again, thank you very much. And thank you, Andy, for organizing this.
Oh, it's my privilege. Thank you, Shui Meng. Anna, did you have any final words? Or...
No, but again, to show all my respect and to Shui Meng for all of these years fighting for the disappearances, and sending a message to all the families that are here with us, saying that you are our inspiration for the work that we are doing. You are the ones who moves us to do the work that we are doing. And finally, only we would like to have contributions from the Asia region for our report. I think it's very important, because even though that in all the regions there are similar things, every country and every region has its particularities. So I'm gonna post here in the chat the call for submissions. We open the call until the second week of February. So you have time to send us the contributions. And again, our heart with the families that are searching for the loved ones.
Thank you. Haider, do you have any last words?
Say that in Pakistan or around the globe, especially in new colonial states, where there is deep penetration and continuous legacy of colonialism, and in Pakistan especially, there existed all the colonial law that provide impunity to these military forces and law enforcement agencies. And until unless they are not abolished, this would go on. And finally, my respect to the family of Sombath and how they are struggling, and we really demand his release, and he should be released as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I suppose a simple, humble conclusion is that for every single, as Sombath situation is so clear, every person's situation is different. Every person's situation is different. And as we take, by necessity, these discussions forward, we have to respect as much as we can every single person's situation and share our personal solidarity with the families and the people who have worked with them and their organizations in ways that we feel we can and best can. At the same time, as you have shared, Anna Lorena, every community situation is different, every national situation is different. And those differences are vital to understand and appreciate, because if we have this, global analysis, it is also disempowering, because if the aim is to hold perpetrators to accountability, then it has to be in the local and national context. It can't be through generalizations. So it is that deep challenge, but it's a absolutely fundamentally required challenge to work with humanity, with respect to the individual situations, to have names, to have faces, to have photographs, to have people at the heart of these discussions, but at the same time, through looking at the mechanisms and ways that the situations can be illuminated, can be held to public accountability and scrutiny, and hopefully at some stage, formal accountability for people's actions through national levels, and of course to the level of the UN Working Group as well, which can bring these together. And it remains to say that the Asia Europe People's Forum, through its nature, through its background, takes on this responsibility to try and continue to work at both of these levels. Well, these three levels: the individual, the human, the national and regional, and the international. So our solidarity continues with you, Shui Meng, with you, Anna, Lorena, and you, Haider, and of course with Charles, on your approaches to trying to take forward the struggles that we all respect you for taking forward. Well, thank you on behalf of the Asia Europe People's Forum for your time, your energy, and your deeply moving and important contributions. And as they say in some languages, the struggle continues. Okay, please take care. Thank you all.